What's up, everybody? This is Dr. Zach Baker of Rehab to Perform and R2P Academy, and you are listening to the Strength and Knowledge Podcast. And today with us, we have special guest Mike Stella of the Movement Underground, coming to us from Long Island, New York. Mike, I know you're a busy guy. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day to get on here with us. Do you mind just spending a minute or two giving the listeners kind of a background on who you are, what you do, and kind of what was your journey to get there?
Zach, first off, thanks so much for having me on. It's really cool. I've watched your guys' journey and how you guys have built your business over the years, and it's very inspiring, and it's really cool to chat with you and meet you face to face. But yeah, I mean, listen, I'm an athletic trainer and strength and conditioning coach, and I started my career like a lot of athletic trainers as an injured athlete. I was, a highly recruited lacrosse player in high school, and unfortunately for me, I had a catastrophic knee blowout. It was an ACL, PCL, MCL, meniscus, tibial plateau fracture. I think the doctor said the official diagnosis was like effed. So, so that's kind of what started me in sports medicine. It was mostly driven out of personal experience and my struggles with pain and mobility and performance in the years after that. I was never really, unfortunately for me, it's that story of just never able to get to my prior level of performance. And again, at the time I was 18, so I didn't really know any better. I didn't know what I know now, that's for sure. So I guess now I'm just the guy I needed 25 years ago. And so, yeah, I own and operate the Movement Underground in Long Island. But like I said, I started my career in athletic training in sports medicine. So I worked in collegiate sports medicine for a number of years, working with high-level athletes in the SEC, in the Atlantic 10 Conference, mostly with like track and field athletes. Baseball, soccer, and football were kind of like the big sports that I worked in those years. And it's just a really cool profession. It's a cool way to see a lot of cases and hone your clinical skills. And I got my master's degree in sports business management. And then, because at the time I was a little bit unsure of whether or not athletic training was going to be a career that, that I could make a decent enough living at, unfortunately. So I started looking into like the business realm, or really just like starting to diversify, I guess, my education and experience. I also studied exercise science when I was in graduate school because I was just really into that part of it, like really starting to study more and learn more in the strength and conditioning side of things, because that's where I was at my own rehab journey, was really more getting things done in the weight room. And so, yeah, and then I kind of parlayed that into a business and started taking that and working with private clients one-on-one. And then slowly but surely that side hustle became a full-time hustle, and it became one small little room, and now it's a giant facility. And here we are now, 10 years later.
That's awesome. Now, talk to me a little bit about the Movement Underground. Are you rehab? Are you performance training? Do you offer both? How many people do you have on staff? Are they PTs, strength coaches? What's it look like there?
So the Movement Underground, like my vision for it was always a multidisciplinary staff that is all passionate about movement and helping people get out of pain. So yeah, we do rehab. We have a full-time physical therapist, massage therapist. I'm an athletic trainer. I have one other athletic trainer and two full-time strength coaches. Even my general manager, my administrative assistant, was a professional baseball player and an athlete that I treated and trained in rehab from Tommy John. So, we're literally a bunch of athletes that are just passionate about helping people move and perform better and get the most out of their life and their exercise and their sport. So we do a little bit of all of it, so we have our sports performance training where we train, like, summer's winding down. So we're just saying goodbye to all our college athletes that are home for the summer and sending them back to school. And, but we also have our Gen Pop clients, local business owners, entrepreneurs, high performing people in lots of different, backgrounds. So it's just a lot of fun. We get a lot of diversity and variability in our clientele. But it's all centered around, trying to find those opportunities for people to get past pain and get back to what they love.
Yeah. And environments like that, where you have a very active, sports-oriented facility, but you have a wide range of people coming in, they are so fun to be a part of. And people feed off each other's energy. And whether you're, 60-year-old pickleball player, or you're an active older individual who maybe just had a total knee, or you're a professional baseball player, you're all there for the same reason. Like, everybody wants to get better. They want to get healthier. They want to get stronger. And it's cool sitting back as like a fly on the wall and just seeing the interactions and the interplay between all of those different backgrounds of people coming together. And I kind of got my first real exposure to that when I was in PT school, doing an internship at, it used to be Fisher Sports, then the Fisher Institute, and now it's kind of looped in with Spooner. But it was awesome. You had like MLB guys, NFL guys, and then you had like a grandmother who just had a total knee, and they're all on plinths side by side, just, all working towards the same thing. It was a really cool experience. Now,
That's really cool. It's funny that you say that because I guess my vision for the clinic side of this was always like physical therapy meets a barbershop.
yeah.
It's like it's rehab. I love so, obviously I'm an athletic trainer, so I was always inspired by the athletic training room style clinic setup. So it's all open. Here's your bay of treatment tables. Everybody's getting in, getting after it, getting it, trying to all, like you said, all there for the same reason. And that's another reason why I actually do intermingle my strength and conditioning groups. I don't separate the athletes and the Gen Pop clients because like I'll have, for example, I might have, 47-year-old surfer basketball player who's a multi-million dollar business owner working out with some high school and college athletes. It's like, why wouldn't you want your high school or college athlete around a highly successful, motivated, just quality, genuine human being? I can't think of a better environment or incubator for greatness by taking people from different backgrounds and letting them sweat it out and work hard for something together. I think that's the secret sauce, man. That's kind of where you sharpen the iron a little bit more.
No, that's awesome. And whether you're in, a highly populated area like Long Island, or you're out where I am, where I'm a little bit past the suburbs, a little bit more rural area, Maryland, all those people in your clinic, they live in the same community. It's like they're going to cross paths with each other. So it's a really cool dynamic. Now, you've been going at this for about 10 years now, if I understand. I'm sure there's been some ups and downs. I'm sure there's been some learning experiences, both professionally as a clinician, professionally as a business owner. Now that you're like 10 years into running your own shop and interacting with individuals kind of outside of the college experience prior, what are some just big aha moments, or what are some things that you've kind of learned along the way or something you wish you would have learned earlier along the way?
I think that the biggest thing for me, Zach, was, when I first decided to take the jump, I think this needs a little bit of context. When I first decided to take the jump into entrepreneurship, I was coming out of it from a place of like quiet desperation because I love athletic training and I love sports medicine. And I got into athletic training because I was influenced very heavily by my athletic trainer at high school, who was the only person willing to help me because my mom was a single parent, didn't have insurance. So everybody was kind of like, oh, we can't really help you. So she went out of her way to help me. And again, not to say that I had the best rehab. I didn't. But, that really inspired me to get into athletic training. But unfortunately for the profession, it's just very difficult to make a living in it. It's a lot of hours, even though I loved the job. Like I loved being in the trenches with my athletes every day, working with high level coaches. I like the pressure, the incubator of getting results quickly. But making 29 grand a year and working 80 hours a week just wasn't sustainable for me. And especially because I come from nothing. Like I didn't have any help. I was literally living in a railroad style apartment, splitting it with a couple of friends just to scrape together enough to eat at the end of the month after I paid my student loan. So my whole thing was, I'm either going to push all the chips in on sports medicine and see, and at the time I believed I had the skills and the knowledge to really help people at a higher level. I was like, I'm either going to do this and succeed, or I'm just going to go get a regular job. Like that was kind of where I was at. It was back against the wall. And at the time, like this is back like 2012, 13-ish, there really wasn't a precedent for athletic trainer in like private practice. There was nothing. And even cash pay practices for PT were pretty rare at that time. So I didn't really have much to go on. And it was a little bit before like the information age really took off, where you could just like hop on YouTube and watch, 4,000 other clinic owners, share their knowledge for free. Like it wasn't like YouTube was a thing, but it wasn't as robust as it is now. So I really just kind of went for it, and I leaned on my master's background in business, and, I thought I had the chops to get people results, and I just started doing the work of getting people results, and the word slowly started to spread. So I think the aha moment for me was that there's always a market for quality. Is that people are always willing to pay. People are willing to pay for a result, and they don't necessarily care about your background or your credential. And I think that was like the big turning point for me as an entrepreneur was a few years in when I'm getting all these referrals and I'm getting more opportunities for speaking engagements. And I started teaching for Rock Tape and I'm like, wow, actually, I kind of was in the beginning thinking like in this mindset of like, nobody's going to respect me because I'm quote unquote just an athletic trainer. And I was wrong. I was wrong about that because I think, on some in the world of social media where flashy shit seems to always get people's attention, the other thing that gets people's attention is competence.
Yeah.
And if you are competent and you're a good communicator and you're good at what you do, people will listen. And if you're just consistent and you spend the time and just stick with it, good things can happen. So the biggest thing for me was I just didn't give it up out of like a borderline obsession for my own health and my own, like figuring out my own injury issues and then just being able to parlay that into results for other people.
It's funny you had mentioned, people not really caring about credentials. And it's something where people care about outcomes and they care about an enjoyable experience getting those outcomes. And it's funny, like at Rehab to Perform, I'm chief clinical officer for the company. I'm program director for our sports residency. I'm board certified in sports. I have titles. I have letters after my name. I had 3 patients literally yesterday. I just had a student leave. I had 3 patients that I think were admittedly upset that my student left and they had to work with me and they didn't get to work with my student anymore because they enjoyed the student that much. They were getting better. They were having a great time with them. And that student was there from the initial eval all through their plan of care with me. And they were like kind of the primary one while I was just, in the background and making sure it was facilitated well. But it just goes to highlight, like, people want results and they want somebody that they can enjoy being around for those results. And it was funny, like in a teaching role, like it was very hard for me early on to like give up the reins and let the students get more involved and kind of step back and let others in. And now I'm starting to realize like you just got to let it happen and you got to let people figure it out. You got to let them get reps in. And kind of like you said, at some point you get to a point in your career where you just got to make the jump and you got to figure out like, is the environment I am in getting what I want out of it? Or do I need to bet on myself and start making things happen?
I totally agree. I think, that's like when people talk about like personal training, remember the first half of that's personal.
Yeah.
The soft skills matter and, just your ability to communicate and like interact with somebody probably is 75% of what you get the result from. The other 25%, the clinical stuff, again, like you should be good and competent at what you do. I believe that. And I also believe that clinicians should continually invest in themselves, invest in their skill set because it is worth it. But it's funny. I think really, really great clinicians don't care about credentials and patients don't care about credentials. The only people who care about it a lot are the people whose reputation is only defined by the credential. Like that's the only level of competence that they can display is, oh, I have this credential. And again, I'm not saying it's nothing, because it takes a lot of hard work and dedication to get those letters, right? But, one of my favorite quotes, and I tell this to all my students, because, like you, I'm a clinical instructor for a local college as well. It's a Mark Twain quote. It's like, don't let your schooling get in the way of your education, right? Schooling is just what you have to do, but education is the fire that you light, and then you have to continually feed the fire, right?
No,
you have to continually throw wood on it. So I think that's what the cream kind of rises to the top. And what I've noticed in my career is like the competent professionals that are so good at what they do, they don't look at the letters. They look at the results. They look at the competence. They look at, the experience. And it's interesting how universally true that's become.
No, that's awesome. All right. Now, what is, and I like asking people from different areas of the country this and people with different backgrounds as well. So we both function in a rehab environment, a performance training environment. There's health, there's wellness, there's fitness. There's all these components to it. What is one thing that you think is going really well kind of in that health, wellness, rehab space? Or, I mean, like another way you could look at this, what do you think has made your clinic successful? Because you've obviously been able to integrate this multidisciplinary approach where, admittedly, I've been in training rooms where there's turf wars. ATs and PTs don't get along. Strength coaches
Yep.
and ATs don't get along. PTs and strength coaches, it's very territorial. So how have you created an environment, or what do you think is going well just in the grand scheme of things to allow something like Movement Underground to do so well, to have all these different services? There's synergy, there's harmony, and there's good outcomes.
That's such a great question. And again, this is part of like coming from that like high Division I experience. Like, so when I worked for the Florida Gators, I worked for them in that 2008, 2009 national championship run. And one of the things, and again, you also, for context, that was my first job out of undergrad. So at the time, athletic training was a 4-year degree.
No pressure there, right?
What's that?
No pressure there,
yeah.
right?
No pressure there, being the guy from New York who drove down and like took this job that like for whatever reason they picked me. Well, actually I found out why I was chosen. They liked getting athletic trainers from small schools because I went to Marist College for undergraduate. And the reason they do that is because my head athletic trainer at the time for football said that, ATs from small programs are more resourceful and are able to do more with less versus like a lot of athletic trainers that are coming out of programs like in the SEC where like budget is basically limitless. Yeah. Get a little bit more reliant on all the fancy gizmos and a little less reliant on their skill set and their knowledge, right? And I was like, oh, that's an interesting perspective. It wasn't what I was expecting him to say, but very, very good compliment for me, especially, just coming out of school. I was pretty stoked about that. But the one thing about Florida that I'll never forget was that sports medicine wasn't its own department. It was called sports health. And sports health was athletic training, sports nutrition, and strength and conditioning all in the same department. So we would have our individual department meetings, but we would also have meetings across the entire sports health division. And that integration is why that university is top 5 in multiple sports every single year. It's because they understand that the magic is in the collaboration, not in the jockeying for position. And also in a culture where results are the only thing that matters. So like you might not have a job if you're not getting results. That's just the way it is. And it's a little bit cutthroat in that respect, but it also breeds excellence in a lot of ways. So I always, and then when I left Florida for a number of different reasons, but and I went to smaller Division I schools that were more compartmentalized in that way. And I did start to experience that where it's like, oh, the strength coaches and the ATs don't really get along. And I'm sitting there like, what the hell? What? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, we're all on the same team. We're all supposed to be pushing this car in the same direction. So I never really vibed with that. And I think that's partly why culture for me in the Movement Underground is so important. Like, I hire my employees for will, not for skill. The skill I can teach them, but do they have the intangibles that I can't teach? Are they good people? Are they passionate about what they're doing? Are they growth minded? Are they in it for the right reasons? Are they really here to help other people, or are they just here to become an Instagram influencer, or because they don't have any other idea of what they want to do with their career? So I think that's the big piece for me, is just like identifying the feeling that I wanted here and reverse engineering that with the people, and then the setup and obviously the type of clients we attract.
No, that's awesome. And I think that one thing that I've gotten way more comfortable with at this point in my career is establishing that connection with the other people in your community that you probably used to view as competition. And at R2P, we just do PT. We don't have, like one-on-one performance training. We don't do small group training. It's, we do end stage rehab where that's a part of it. But we don't actively market like, hey, come to R2P and we'll do strength conditioning, strength training. So I think what I've gotten a lot more comfortable with is going to all the strength coaches in the area, going to all the massage therapists in the area, going to all of the other people that have very synergistic backgrounds that, admittedly, I used to think of them kind of as the competition, like, oh, if this person goes to a massage therapist, they're not going to come to me, or if this person gets too far post-op, they're just going to transition to strength coach. And what I really started to figure out was you gain a lot more business when people truly understand what you do and what you bring to the table. And physical therapy is a very wide-ranging profession with an extremely admittedly wide-ranging of competencies within the outpatient orthopedic sports med world. And I think there's some strength coaches that when they hear the word PT, they're like, oh, well, that person doesn't know anything about strength conditioning. And then if you go and have that conversation and you guys realize you talk the same language, there's some mutual trust there. They don't worry about sending a patient to you and you just saying, oh, you can't work out. Your knee hurts. Go cancel your membership for a month. And then the other end of the spectrum, there's a lot of PTs out there that don't think strength coaches or don't think massage therapists or don't think ATs know the breadth and the depth of the knowledge that they know. And then you have a conversation with them and you're like, man, this guy or girl knows their shit. Like, this is somebody that we can integrate them into a plan of care much more quickly. And yeah, this person can come in for PT, but there's no reason why they can't go train with this person 2 or 3 other days a week as well. And I think that's something that, at least in the area that I work in the DMV, DC, Maryland area, is I'm starting to see a lot more collaboration there and people really starting to get comfortable with identifying what their niche is and how that niche fits in kind of with the greater system that they have within their community.
I think you nailed it. And again, I think that also, to your credit, comes from a place of maturity in your career. And it's just like you're willing to go out there and collaborate with others and play nice in the sandbox. And I think what happens is a lot of people are like, oh, wow, I have an ally here. It's not an enemy. This is somebody that I can lean on and improve my business. Right. And so when I first started the Movement Underground, we were purely more on the sports medicine side. So my clinic space was rented out of like a giant baseball training facility that also had a strength and conditioning company that was renting out of it. So it was kind of like a shared environment with multiple individual businesses that were all collaborating with each other for the most part. There was definitely some issues more on the baseball sports side of it, but as far as like the strength and conditioning side and like what we were doing with sports medicine and like pitching development, it was very, very synchronous, and it was some of the most fun and some of the greatest relationships and memories that I've had having my business. And then when we took over more space and we got our own space and we started to jump into like, hey, we're going to do this performance training thing. Again, a lot of the people who were referring to us still do, because they know I'm not here to just poach their clients. I'm going to continue to encourage them to train and nurture that relationship that they have. I'm going to give them maybe some guidance around, hey, let's substitute this for that, but I want to keep you going. So I think when people start to get to know you and what your philosophy is and what you're about clinically, and they start to realize, oh, you're not just that classic, got to shut it down and, just do PT for a while. I think people are much more willing to collaborate. And like you said, you nailed it. It's like the better clinicians understand that there's a time and a place for all of it. And we all have more to gain from working together. Like, even if we put all the PTs, ATs, chiros, and massage therapists in the same bucket, there'd still be an overwhelming number of people to help.
Yeah.
And we still wouldn't have enough people. So like all this like gerrymandering in between the individual professions, I kind of think it's a little bit silly, because we're all just attacking similar movement problems from a different perspective or lens, a slightly different lens. And if we just got rid of that, I think we'd all be better off, and the industry would be a lot better off. So, but that's just my piece.
It's funny. I met with one of the local gym business owners in the Frederick area where I work, and it's a quote that always stuck with me when we started meeting. Is he said, Zach, there's about 100,000 people that live within this geographic area. I can only fit about 500 of them in my doors at any given time. So there is more than enough business in this town to go around if we all learn how to play together nicely. And it was I never really thought about it that way. It's like, you can really only serve so many people at any given time. And I think the other way that I look at it too is like, all right, I can do hands-on work with somebody within a session. I can't do it for 90 minutes, but a massage therapist can. I can do strength training with an individual in a session. But when we start getting to like later phase rehab and you're doing legitimate strength training and legitimate power training, we're moving heavy weights, we're generating high levels of stimulus, you actually need adequate rest break in between as well. So that takes time. I don't have 2 hours to take somebody through a workout in addition to managing symptoms, in addition to addressing impairments. So like at some point you got to figure out like, where do I best fit into this picture, and how can I spend my hour with this person 2 or 3 days a week? And they still need other stuff. They just don't need to do that within these 4 walls. And they can get that service here. They can get this service there. And then you don't have a PT trying to do 3 different people's jobs. Or you don't have a massage therapist or a strength coach trying to do their job and somebody else's. And you start to realize like, hey, this person got better pretty damn quick and to a really, really good level. And the only way that would have happened is if we had all 3 of us doing what our specialties are, instead of all 3 of us trying to do kind of a half-assed job of each other's job.
Right. Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, that's such a great way to put it, you know?
And then, all right, so Mike, we just talked about, there's some things that we're doing really well within this field. Through the years, what are some things that you've either, found yourself reflecting on, like, man, I wish I wouldn't have spent as much time doing that, or focusing on that, or as you take students through your facility or different interns coming in, what are some conversations or things that you frequently find yourself telling them, or frequently finding yourself like, hey, if I could have told myself or done this earlier in my career, I would have done it. Make sure you take time to do this, or take time to think about that. What would that come to mind for you?
Wow. I mean, that's a great question. I think, at least speaking to athletic trainers that might be listening, is like not being afraid to invest in themselves. I think a lot of athletic trainers complain that they don't make enough money, that they work too many hours, that they're asked to do too much. And maybe that's true to some degree, but I do think at a certain point you have to look in the mirror and say, well, what am I doing to change this? What am I doing to better my situation? And so I think a lot of what happens in the industry, and listen, I love this stuff, and maybe it's because it became an obsession for me because of my own insecurities with my athletic career. But there are people out there that just get their degree and they get their job and they go to work and they go through the motions and they go home, and work is not the most important thing to them, and treating clients is not the most important thing to them. And that's okay. There's still people that person can help. I think one of the things that, again, I'm most proud of is that I invested in myself and that I stuck with it and I was patient. Even though I wasn't patient in those years, I stuck around long enough to kind of let the doors open up for me. And it just didn't happen right away. And I think a lot of clinicians kind of jump ship way too early. They still like, oh man, this is a lot of work. This is harder than I thought it was going to be. This is, not the money that I thought I was going to be making. And they go, okay, I'm going to go just jump ship and find the easier money. And you can certainly do that. But I'm so grateful that I get to do something that I'm fulfilled with every day. I think from an industry perspective, I think from an industry perspective, there is more opportunity now if you are a competent, quality clinician than there ever has been before. I think insurance is continually getting watered down. I think people are more and more aware that the care that they're getting in the standard operating procedure is, for the most part, crap. That maybe there's some bright people in a lot of those bigger hospital systems and organizations, but I think this centralization and this monetization of healthcare has really left people seeing it for like kind of this corporate sleazy money grab that it honestly has become in a lot of ways. So if you are a quality clinician and you do have the chops and you can get people results, I think there's more opportunity now than there's ever been to succeed in this. And again, it's because places like Rehab to Perform and all of these smaller mom and pops are like, we can do this better, and we're going to start to set the benchmark for what quality care looks like. And now you're starting to see more and more of these things starting to pop up. And the reality is the movement underground exists because there's a need for it. It didn't exist 20 years ago when I was rehabbing my knee because there wasn't really a necessity for it at that time, I guess. But like now you see all of these hybrid facilities because people are looking for a more complete experience. They're looking for, I want to work with somebody who I know has my best interest in mind, who's in my corner, and I want them to help me from beginning to end. And I think and again, to your point before, if you can align yourself with the right people and build the team that fills in all of those needs and bind them with a cohesive philosophy of like what we're doing, what the vision and the mission is, you're unstoppable at that point.
No, I love that. And I think, going back a few minutes to the previous thing you had mentioned, delayed gratification is a term that always comes up. And like you mentioned, it's okay to be unhappy with your circumstances. But then you also got to figure out what can I control and how can I try to put myself in the best position to elevate these circumstances. And unfortunately, like the ROI isn't always immediate on that. And you gotta put the effort in. Sometimes you got to take chances. And then you got to give it time to play out. And something that I frequently find myself telling my students is, like, don't wait for the perfect opportunity to do whatever it is you're looking to do. Because there never is a perfect opportunity. There's always going to be an inconvenience that pops up at different phases of life, whether you're single, married, have kids, don't have kids, work 2 jobs, work 1 job, still in school, whatever it is, like, there's always going to be an inconvenience. And whenever that inconvenience solves itself, a new one's going to pop up. So
100%.
At some point, you just have to say, if I'm this passionate about it and I feel like I'm that qualified for it, I just need to make the jump and do it. And then on an even more simplistic term with that, like developing a plan of care with a patient, I'll see students like they try to create this A++ plan of care from day one. And I'm like, let's just start with something that's serviceable. It's safe, it's effective, we know we're going to get trending in the right direction, and then we take that B- program and we make it a B, a B+, an A-, an A as we get further into it and as we learn more and more about the patient, because honestly, every time they come in, it's like a little mini consultation and reevaluation anyways, and we just need a starting point. So like,
right.
Don't be afraid to get started. Don't be afraid to bet on yourself. Things will not always happen immediately, and it's a dynamic process. And I think, going through your business, going through our business, we've seen change. You've seen your business grow from a smaller location to a larger location. You've brought on more people. We've done the same thing. We've gone from a single location to multiple locations. And I think the one thing that we try to pride ourselves on is staying true to your values. And because you're cash, because you're insurance, because you're big, because you're small, none of that makes you better or worse. Like there are some,
right.
And that's my argument when people are like, "Oh, don't get too big. You're not gonna have quality care. Or you're not gonna do well." I'm like, where'd you get your coffee from? Starbucks? Is that the local mom and pop down the road?
Right.
Or is that the big conglomerate? Like, where'd you get your clothes from? Did you go have somebody hand knit them for you, or did you go to the local department store and get them? So right. I think you can grow and evolve personally. You can grow and evolve as a business and a company, but it always comes down to, am I still in it for the reasons that I got into it? Am I still being intentional with the service I'm providing, and how are we tracking outcomes, and how are we tracking these outcomes and making sure that we're actually getting the outcomes that we said we were going to do? And if you do that, it's not hard for people to realize that you are quality and for word to spread and to go from there. So now, Mike, I appreciate all the time and all the thoughts today. For those that do want to stay in touch with you, or for those that do want to get in contact with you, what is the best way for people to just kind of follow along with what's going on up at the Movement Underground, or to reach out to you?
I mean, I'm pretty easy to find on social media. You can find me on Instagram at MikeStella_ATC. That's also my X handle. And then, on Facebook, YouTube, the Movement Underground, you can find us there too. Or just visit us on the web, movementunderground.com. There's lots of ways to reach out, in addition to doing, our athlete services and rehab and training and all that stuff. I also do, business coaching for other entrepreneurial minded clinicians of any background. If you're interested in starting a business, or you don't know where to start, it's something that is, you got the fire burning in your belly and you just don't know how to get it out. I've developed a secondary passion for helping people not make as many mistakes as I made going through those early years. And so, we're building out this really, really cool platform to, help our rehab communities kind of raise the game all together. It's like, yes, we're all separate businesses. Yes, we all need to make a living, but we can help each other impact our communities and by building really solid, sound businesses that are scalable and that are, and again, I think that's part of it too, where people get hung up. They're like, oh, if you get too big, you're going to drop your quality. It's like, well, if you get bigger, you can help more people. Yeah. And you can be in charge of that quality. You can make sure that the quality stays high. And so that's what I'm passionate about. And so I'm more than happy to help you or anybody out there that thinks that I'm a good fit for them or they like my style or my approach. Well, let's have a conversation. So I'll meet you on Instagram. We could start there and we'll figure out ways to communicate further.
That's awesome. It's one last thing on my end. You had mentioned, getting bigger and staying good. Every time we hire a new person, I have that conversation with them like, hey, we are getting bigger as a company. We're going to stay really good at what we're doing. And we are bigger as a company because we just hired you. Like, you are the reason we are bigger. You are the new person we brought on. We would not have gotten bigger. We would not have hired you if we didn't think you were really, really good. And if you think that us as getting bigger is going to water down quality, you're essentially saying that you joining our team is going to make us worse. And I don't think you feel that way. So it's kind of funny. It usually polices itself very well. But Mike, appreciate the time. For those that are listening, if you enjoyed this episode, like, share, subscribe. You are listening to the Strength and Knowledge Podcast. This is Dr. Zach Baker. Have a great day.